Just the word of caution before we get started. This gets darker than I expected. Much darker. So if you don't quite make it to the end, I don't blame you. We tend to think of animated features as just for kids. I remember years ago my mum couldn't understand us watching Family Guy at 9 o'clock at night, as she was convinced it must be a children's show because it's animated. Unfortunately, Mum was deaf and couldn't appreciate the constant stream of cheeky satire and fart jokes. Probably just as well. Children's TV and movies in the 60s through to the 80s had no filter here in the UK. Along with the terrifying short public information films, shows like Doctor Who, The Tomorrow People and Children of the Stones regularly contain scenes guaranteed to send you to bed with the lights on. But there are some movies over the years made by highly gifted and visionary writers and animators that have told us some of the most terrible, frank and nightmarish tales that, once seen, never leave that dark corner of our minds even as an adult. Possibly through the innocence of childhood, we always trust animation never to go too far, until it does.
When you hear the attack warning, you and your family must take cover at once.
Early cartoonists were amongst the first to exploit this trick. Admittedly, these guys were the pioneers, and much of this unsettling imagery could simply be put down to enthusiasm and experimentation, rather than deliberately trying to unnerve their viewers. Still, in the 1930s, the likes of Max Fleischer's adaptation of Snow White included the somewhat creepy Coco the Clown and a pretty grim witch, Coco himself putting you in mind of the Crooked Man from the Conjuring series. In similar vein, Fleischer's cautionary tale Swing You Sinners is more like a warning of the dangers of hallucinogens than consequences of stealing, and a special nod here to his own Hell's Bells, which surely inspired Carpenter and Rob Bottin to bring The Thing to life.
You too!
For me, the annual Duck Apple night airing of Disney's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow as a child would find me hidden behind the sofa without fail by the end. And this is before the arrival of the Headless Horseman himself. Ichabod Crane navigating the dark countryside home at midnight after hearing the tale of the horseman, where every sight and sound seems out to get him. I'm pretty sure every generation has their favourite depiction of Washington Irving's unnerving tale. There's been many of them. Without doubt, there is certainly something creepy about old cartoons that get under the skin. Many might recall, or prefer not to, the 1953 adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. A deeply unnerving story of denied insanity and murder. The unfortunate victim's life taken by the narrator because his eye made him uneasy. Director Ted Parmalee's muted palate, and James Mason's narration lending real gravitas in this tale of psychosis taken to a terrible conclusion.
I think it was his eye. Yes, that eye.
You see the hat? I am Mrs. Nesbit.
But it doesn't have to be a deliberate attempt to terrify to achieve something disquieting on screen. Who can ever forget, child or grown-up, Sid's Frankenstein-esque handiwork from Toy Story, limbs without heads, heads without bodies, reminiscent of Silent Hill meets Hellraiser. the only saving grace being his downfall at the hands of his own creations.
So play nice.
And what 80s kid didn't expect a fun, appliance-themed adventure from the brave little toaster? Only to be traumatised for life by some of the most disturbing visuals ever committed to screen. And just an honorary mention here before we go deeper. Not strictly animation, but something that does combine it with live action to glorious effect. 1988's Who Framed Roger Rabbit is without doubt a cheeky, bawdy romp for the whole family. But what the hell was director Robert Zemeckis thinking with the death of Christopher Lloyd's Judge Doom scene? Steamroll it, fine. It happens in many Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry cartoons. But then... And then... God, please make it stop. Follow me.
Swim more, Ralph.
We must be near the island.
The East has got an amazing talent for some of the most mesmerising and inventive animation. Japan arguably leading the way with the Studio Ghibli tour de force. Even so, while there's something for all ages there to thoroughly enjoy, often the characters and situations depicted can have an air of fever dream unworldliness that might sit uncomfortably with some viewers. Notable too, an early entry by the studio, Grave of the Fireflies. While still a beautiful production, it depicts the absolute cruelty of war through the eyes of two young siblings, the two doomed by the harsh and hopeless world they're thrust into. While we're on that side of the Pacific, for this video I felt I owed it to you guys to watch the most controversial anime I stumbled across while researching. Banned in its native country Japan, Midori's Shoujo Tsubaki is a tragic tale of adolescent flower girl Midori, who, following the death of her mother, joins a travelling freak show. Drawn in crude but effective anime style, it's not the extreme gore and body horror that earned this film its notoriety, but more the subject matter tackled. Midori is exploited, physically and mentally mistreated, and worse by those she seeks solace in. Coupled with this, graphic animal cruelty and sadistic detail, and this is not an easy watch. But for the darkest corners of our warren, we're travelling to the UK, and to begin with, a plot of common land near the hamlet of Sandalford.
The field is covered with blood. It's covered with blood. It's covered with blood.
Richard Adams' first book in 1972, Watership Down, was a huge success, enjoyed by adults and older children alike. Adapted for the screen in 1978, who would have thought the tale of rabbits on an adventure from one warren to another would have the power to permanently scar all who saw it? The brutality of life told through the eyes of the innocent is uncomfortable to witness, and their fear of the unknown is infectious and palpable. For me, however, it's not the creatures' violence to each other that truly disturbed me.
The field is covered with blood.
Blood? That is silly.
It was the humans, carelessly clawing up the land and filling the still occupied burrows, while hundreds of the animals suffocate. Four years later, director Martin Rosen adapted another Adams novel and took things even darker than Watership Down. The Plague Dogs had much less moments of the whimsical charm that lightened its predecessor, short of the hallucinations for one of the canine friends. This time the tale remains grounded in stark reality. Rolf and Snitter are captive in an animal research facility. Snitter's confusions stem from the fact that they carried out experiments on his brain, while Rolf's fate is to be drowned and then resuscitated continuously.
We do have a monkey service this evening. On that tank.
The two escape, but only to find out the outside world presents its own harsh realities. Hunger, betrayal, and the pursuit of troops in the facility they escaped from. Their previous captors convincing the world the dogs are carrying bubonic plague. The cruelty and violence depicted here, along with a crushing yet ambiguous ending, it's up to you what you choose to believe depending on what you can actually endure, makes this an impossibly heartbreaking watch.
Can't seem to move my legs anymore.
Well, keep going. Try.
Can't swim anymore, Ralph.
We must be near the island.
There isn't any island, Ralph.
So we're almost there, and well done if you've hung on this far. But what could be more traumatic than the awful plight of two canine buddies tortured and hunted to exhaustion and starvation?
That's meat. Yes, roast dinners. I expect people having their Sunday dinners early this week due to the unexpected circumstances.
Take my hand and I'll show you. Here in the UK, the snowman has been part of our childhood Christmases since the late 70s, firstly as a beguiling illustrated children's book by Raymond Briggs, and a little later a charming musical TV adaptation. It's a very simple tale of a boy who builds a snowman one day. That night, on the stroke of midnight, the snowman comes to life, and after the two get up to some fun and mischief around the house, the magical snowman takes the boy's hand and whisks him off into the night sky. Flying over the South Downs, onto Brighton Pier, and in the TV story off to the Arctic to meet Father Christmas and his reindeer. The ending after all this jollity is tragic, but inevitable I suppose. Around the time the snowman became a festive favourite, Briggs released his novel When the Wind Blows. But this wasn't for children. This was for the world.
Here is a reminder of what the air attack warning sounds like. This is the sound.
Come back, you stupid bitch, and get in the shelter!
The cake will be there! The cake will be there! The cake will be there!
Elderly couple Jim and Hilda live out in the countryside. Hilda is quite the fastidious homekeeper, while Jim likes to keep up with current affairs. They have a son, Ron, who resides with his family somewhere closer to town.
It's not Cobbler's son. It's in the governmental directive. You mean you're not constructing in a coral refuge?
As tensions between Afghanistan and Russia escalate, Jim makes himself familiar with the Government Protect and Survive booklet. This a genuine information sheet at the time on how to best prepare in case of impending invasion. Much to Hilda's frustration, he busies himself painting the window panes white and removing the inside doors to make, quote, an inner core or refuge.
Refuge? Looks quite cosy, doesn't it, dear?
He stocks up on what supplies he can, despite the shortages and panic buying. It all sounds silly to Hilda. They've seen all this before, haven't they? World War II, egg rationing and Vera Lynn. Of course, this precaution is just that, isn't it? A precaution. Until...
It is estimated that the missiles will arrive in approximately 3 minutes. Stay indoors and take
Come
cover.
back, you stupid bitch, and
Lie
get in the
down
shelter!
and hide.
No need to forget our
Do not
manners
look
just
at the
because
sky
there's a
or
war on.
Shut up! I'm trying to listen!
Take shelter immediately
Oh
against
dear,
this country.
I've left the
Do
oven
not
on.
leave your
Get in!
homes.
Get in!
Stay
Get in!
indoors
The
and take
cake
cover.
will be
Keep away
burned.
from windows. Cover your head and eyes. Stay indoors. Do not leave your home.
Blimey.
Our stalwarts survived the blast. The house is a mess. The whitewashed windows blew in. Hilda's worried about the curtains, but insists she'll wash them tonight. She can't, of course. They must remain in the Inokoro refuge while the radiation is high. So they remain. Until the aches and pains and confusion set in. Swiftly followed by exhaustion, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, dehydration, shock, hemorrhaging. All while Jim reassures himself and Hilda that the emergency services will be with them any time now.
Have you got lipstick on, dear?
My gums are bleeding.
Ill-fitting dentures, that's what that is.
In reality, of course, they never will. The horror of When the Wind Blows doesn't come from graphic visuals or extreme imagery. The real horror here is watching the lives of two lovely people be erased in one single white-hot flash, rendering everything they ever strived for and achieved utterly meaningless. Unable to grasp this, the two attempt to by likening it to things they were familiar with.
Nonsense. We didn't think what colour clothes we had on in the war. Lucky to have any clothes.
Outside, Hilda believes she can smell a roast, when in fact what she actually smells is her neighbours. And even when every cell in the old couple's body is essentially cooking, Jim insists he'll pop to the chemist in the morning for them. Well, that's it for this one, guys. Thank heavens. I've got to say, it took it out of me more than I expected. But if you enjoyed it, if that's the right word, that's all I strive for. And if you did, please leave a like and maybe subscribe, as this helps the channel no end. I think I might work on something a bit lighter next, like why the end of The Mist isn't so bad.
Sheesh.